Why do certain signs feel when something changes, even without seeing anything? There are signs that do not appear in the sky, but reverberate in the decisions we avoid making. And Scorpio, of all people, tends to notice what is not said, not by instinct, but by a kind of ancestral response. January 2026 does not start neutral. It brings with it hidden tensions, especially with Pluto, its ruler, transiting Aquarius, while the waxing moon rises in Aries. This combination creates internal friction that cannot be resolved in a hurry or in silence. This phase activates what we call underground impulses, movements that escape logic, but call for action. And that's where many Scorpios get stuck, because they know that every choice has an energetic cost. Nothing in 2026 will be superficial for Scorpio. If you try to maintain the same strategies, patterns, or ways of avoiding conflicts, you will realize that the results are not sustainable. This is a cycle that requires another stance, not reactive but aware of one's own function on the bigger board. Destiny, in this case, is not a predictable path, but a field of forces where Scorpio can either be dragged or become a point of influence. And this decision will not come by luck, but by alignment. Therefore, first of all, it is necessary to understand what is being moved behind the astral scenes. What is Pluto suggesting? What is the moon in Aries tensioning within your own personal axis? There is a reason these conjunctions are acting now, and those who are Scorpios know that the greatest processes do not begin with applause, but with silences that become internal questions, because what is at stake at the beginning of the cycle is not control, it is the type of energy that you decide to listen to from here on. And if you're feeling that silent tension, maybe this content has come at the right time, because understanding what these movements represent and how Scorpio is positioned in front of them is not about empty predictions, but about reading deep patterns that impact your practical, emotional, and even spiritual decisions. Pluto doesn't press by chance, and the crescent moon in Aries doesn't trigger impulses for nothing. There is something being articulated, and the more you understand, the more you can choose clearly and firmly, without getting lost in repetitions that are no longer useful. If you've ever experienced situations where you felt you needed to act, but hesitated, or noticed that something internal changed without explanation, share it in the comments. Scorpio is a sign that carries codes that others don't access, and when you speak, you activate. Each story you leave here can be a mirror for someone who is also trying to decipher what they feel. So comment, write what has touched you so far, and if this content is making you think, if it has already awakened some new memory or perception, that has value. Like the video, because that's what allows more people to find this information. Subscribe to the channel to continue following the next astral movements that will require a conscious posture. Here, each video is part of a sequence. We are not just talking about signs, we are observing cycles that require presence. And from here, what comes becomes even more revealing. It's precisely at this point that many people get lost, when they feel a change in the air, but don't know how to name it. On January 11, 2026, the sky brings two movements that do not directly touch each other, but look at each other like pieces of the same enigma. The moon in its waxing phase occupies the sign of Aries, marking a moment when the will to act surpasses any mental elaboration. This is not an energy that asks for permission. It emerges. It pierces the surface. And this in itself already creates a field of tension for those who carry deep internal forces, as is the case with Scorpio. But what makes this moment even more dense, and at the same time powerful, is that while the moon ignites this raw desire for advancement, Pluto continues to travel through Aquarius, a sign of the collective, of innovation, of structures that have not yet been established. And as Pluto rules Scorpio, any shift on this planet has a direct impact on unconscious processes, on cycles that demand closure, on the forces that act behind what is visible. Pluto doesn't act quickly, but it transforms everything it touches. And now, this transformation takes place at a frequency that challenges the standards that Scorpio has built to protect itself from the world. This combination of raw momentum and structural transformation is not comfortable, but it is not punishing either. It's a type of pressure that manifests itself in seemingly small decisions, saying what you never said, giving up what has already expired, assuming a truth that has always been carried in silence. The point is that, for Scorpio, Doing this is not simply changing, it's going through layers that were created precisely to avoid collapse. And this is the point where 2026 requires more discernment than courage, because there is a difference between reacting to the impulse to and Aries and listen to what Pluto is signaling. One moves, the other reveals. And when both act at the same time, the risk is not in making mistakes but in continuing without listening. Scorpio begins the year with this crossroads, being led by external forces or learning to name the movements that are born within. It's not an easy choice, especially because Scorpio has an ancestral pattern of survival that makes him resist even what he already understands, not out of stubbornness, but out of loyalty to what has worked in the past. But 2026 no longer wants the same mechanisms, and this is evident in small discomforts, conversations that become unbearable, environments that previously seemed neutral and now drain energy, cycles that no longer sustain even the effort to maintain themselves. None of this is noise. These are signs that there is a new alignment being formed, and it will not be accessed with the old formulas. Scorpio needs to listen to discomfort like someone listening to a password. They don't scream, but they don't silence either. It only marks what can no longer remain. And perhaps it is precisely at this point that the most important movement happens. When Scorpio realizes that it is not about resisting or giving in, but about adjusting. And the adjustment here is not external. It's not the work, the relationship, the routine. It's something more subtle, the way Scorpio deals with its own intensity. In 2026, this intensity needs to be redirected, not to confront what is outside, but to illuminate what is yet to be named within. And that changes everything. Because instead of positioning themselves as someone who needs to protect what they feel, Scorpio takes the place of someone who translates the energies that others cannot identify. This is the real power of Scorpio. In this new cycle, being the first to feel, but also the first to understand. And there is no more valuable map in a time of transition than one that can anticipate what others have not yet realized. However, to do so, Scorpio needs to abandon one of the strategies he has used most in recent years. The silence he maintains but also isolates. The waxing moon in Aries does not favor secrets, and Pluto in Aquarius breaks old emotional pacts, especially those made with versions of yourself that no longer exist. And so 2026 does not begin with haste, but with friction. It's as if Scorpio is led to listen to their own limits, not to exceed them, but to understand what is still being sustained by fear and not by truth. And it is at this point that the turning point begins, when Scorpio decides to move not to react to what bothers him, but to cooperate with what is being revealed over time. This does not mean giving up your depth, nor changing your essence. It means that now your strength is no longer in keeping what you feel, but in knowing the right moment to express what has been understood. And this cannot be learned in books, nor in generic formulas. This wisdom comes from silently listening to the cycles themselves, and the January skies are delivering one of those maps, not as an answer, but as an invitation to interpret the signs themselves. In fact, many Scorpios have already started to notice these signs without knowing exactly where they come from. It's that irritation for no reason, the need to reorganize time, the realization that something that used to make sense no longer fits. And all of this seems small, until the moment you understand that they are pieces on the same board. Astrology doesn't deliver destiny, it reveals patterns. And that's what 2026 is asking of Scorpio. Reading, not rushing. Clarity, not defense. Presence, not control. And this is where I want to invite you to something deeper. If you've been watching so far, it's no coincidence. Scorpio feels when something is for them. And if this content touched you on some level, write in the comments what is transforming in there. Talk about the cycles that began to end, even without you announcing it to anyone. Share your reading, because when you name it, you activate it. Comment if this beginning of the year has brought you any internal signs. Enjoy the video if this made sense to you. There is a layer in this 2026 cycle that will not be perceived with our eyes, looking only outward. Scorpio, unlike other signs, is not only affected by visible events, it absorbs subtle movements, those that do not arrive with words, but with sensation. And this new time is not interested in testing your productivity or your performance. What you are going through now is more delicate and more serious. It is how much you can sustain what you feel, without continuing to hide it from yourself. The approaching energy does not require physical effort. It causes exposure, not the one that appears on the surface, but the one that appears when what was kept starts to want to come out. And this, for Scorpio, represents a type of test that few can understand on the outside. There are Scorpios who have spent years creating mechanics we strive to maintain control of everything around us, and not because they are cold or calculating, but because they know that letting go requires trust in something greater than instinct itself. But this structure, built over so long, begins to show cracks when the energy of Pluto, ruler of Scorpio, crosses Aquarius with its proposal to break with what no longer serves the collective. And that's when the wires start to slip out of your hands. No matter how much you organize, anticipate, shield yourself, this transition is not about defense. It's about allowing something other than control to reveal a strength that only appears when you accept being crossed. Other Scorpios will feel this movement even more intimately. Those who have always experienced emotions intensely, but chose to silence their feelings for strategy or protection, will come across a type of silence that begins to press from within. It is no longer possible to save. It is no longer functional to remain silent. What is not revealed begins to distort within the energy field, creating noise, disagreements, tensions that have no rational explanation, but that generate real impacts. Scorpio, who has always loved in silence, will realize that silence now takes a toll, and it's not punishment, it's energetic coherence. Because everything that is not expressed seeks another way to manifest itself, and when emotional language is suffocated, the body starts to speak for it. The soul stirs, the environment responds, relationships are reconfigured without warning. And then there are those Scorpios who have always aligned themselves with some form of higher mission, purpose, or delivery. These are not being challenged in faith, but in the format in which this delivery takes place. In previous cycles, it was necessary to fulfill specific roles, where archetypes carry out functions that, at some point, made sense. But in 2026, what was once a mission could become a prison, which is why redirection starts to happen without you asking for it. Suddenly, what made sense no longer pulses. What guided loses magnetism. The call changes tone. And this is not a mistake on the route. It's frequency update. Fate is not taking anything from you. It's asking for a more coherent way for you to remain available to what's coming. And this coherence is not built with effort, but with truth. All of this can only be understood when Scorpio understands that this cycle is not about resistance or blind surrender. It's about translation. What is being required of you is not strength nor courage in the conventional sense. It's honesty with what no longer fits, even if it still serves you. The true test of 2026 presents itself in the moments when you feel the urge to repeat familiar patterns but choose to remain in the void of the unnamed. And it is precisely in this interval between the old and the new that the Scorpio soul reveals itself most intensely. The turning point will not come with an external event. It begins when you stop identifying with old versions of yourself. Those that survived, yes, but that now no longer support what your vibration is asking for. Scorpio, which has always been associated with symbolic death, regeneration, emotional alchemy, needs to remember that rebirth does not happen because there is a promise. It happens when there is a real willingness to die for something that has already accomplished what it had to accomplish. This includes narratives, beliefs, bonds, internal places that you have visited for years and that now call for definitive silence. What presents itself in 2026 is the possibility of no longer being a hostage to what you built to protect yourself. But this freedom comes with a choice, and it won't be done out loud. It will happen between the lines, in how you will choose to respond to the discomfort, in the way you will deal with relationships that reflect you with honesty, in the way you will look at your own movements without judgment but with presence. And this presence for Scorpio is everything, because it is what allows real alignment with what time is asking for. And as contradictory as it may seem, this year will not challenge you with spectacular events. What will provoke you most will be the subtle, a slight variation in the behavior of someone close to you, the lack of enthusiasm for something that previously moved you, the discomfort when repeating an emotional pattern that no longer matches who you are becoming. All of this is energetic reading. This is all part of Scorpio's spiritual training. And the more you resist this reading, the more the experiences will intensify, not to punish, but to teach you to listen differently. Because this listening needs to be in tune with the symbols of time, and no longer with the noises of survival. Deep listening for Scorpio is not optional, it's a tool, and now it needs to be used to interpret reactions from your own field. The pauses, the dreams, the mirrorings, the finals. You can even try to ignore it, but you will realize that what is being activated within you is not something external. It is a code that is only accessed when you allow yourself to observe details that previously went unnoticed. And when that happens, there is no return to the previous state, because what is perceived transforms, and this transformation, contrary to what many think, does not destroy. She rearranges. If this content came to you in a moment of transition, if it touched you in some way that you still don't know how to explain, I want to invite you to leave in the comments what is already being transformed in there. It doesn't need to be something resolved. Just be real. Speak what you're feeling. And when the signs start to emerge, they usually don't come with big revelations. They come little by little, disguised as coincidences, as if they wanted to test your attention. But Scorpio feels when time begins to reorganize itself around something that has not yet been named, and it is exactly this type of perception that is intensifying now. You are not being asked to guess the future, nor to interpret everything immediately. What's happening is an adjustment, a change, in the frequency with which information reaches you. The rhythm changes, the body reacts differently, thoughts become less linear and more circular, as if they were trying to take you to a specific point. And that point is not outside, it is within you. The inner voices that once seemed just part of ordinary thinking now intensify. They are not voices in the literal sense. They are symbolic commands that arrive as precise intuitions, as a feeling that something needs to be done, even if you don't yet understand exactly what. These are not random guesses. These are impressions loaded with density. And Scorpio, among all signs, knows the difference between a passing thought and a profound calling. When this type of information starts to appear, there is no point trying to ignore or rationalize it. She comes back, she insists, and not because it wants to scare you, but because it is there to be heard. Another phenomenon that frequently manifests itself in this cycle is dreams. But they are not conventional dreams. They are not disconnected, meaningless scenes. These are symbolic images, which involve the presence of water, crossing corridors, the sensation of going downstairs, the vision of hidden passages, or entering places where light is scarce. Water, in these dreams, is not just an element of cleansing or emotion. It appears as a portal. It marks the transition between one state and another, between a version of you that has already fulfilled its role and another that is still in formation. These dreamlike environments reveal that something inside you is ready to emerge, but has not yet found the language to express itself awake. And dreams become the bridge between the visible and what is yet to be manifested. These elements should not be taken as absolute predictions, but as codes of perception. Scorpio is being called to listen with another type of attention, a listening that is not done with the ears, but with the internal field that captures vibrations before they even become words. And in that same field, a feeling that is difficult to explain, but impossible to ignore, begins to emerge. The impression that something is about to reappear. It could be someone who marked an important cycle. It could be a topic that you thought you had already resolved. It could be an issue that seemed closed, but now returns in a different guise. This perception is not rational, but it is not random either. It is part of what is being energetically reactivated. The return of these presences, physical or symbolic, should not be interpreted as a sign of repetition, but as an opportunity to reconnect with parts of yourself that were left on pause. At certain moments, time needs to reopen internal files so that you understand what had not yet been assimilated. It's not about reliving old experiences, but about looking at them with a different consciousness, with the maturity that only time grants. And that's exactly what Scorpio begins to experience in this cycle, a new lens to observe old plots. These subtle manifestations are not intended to alarm or confuse. They work like mirrors that do not show the face, but the layers that formed behind gestures, choices, and unresolved emotions. When these layers begin to move, the external world appears to change with it. But in fact, it is the internal world that is responding to what the sky has already signaled. And this response needs to be received with discernment, not in a hurry. What Scorpio is being called to do now is recognize that these signs are part of a broader reorganization. It is a silent but profoundly transformative process, and the more you ignore it, the more it repeats itself, not as a punishment, but as a reminder. Because what is being rearranged is not just what you feel, but it's what you do with what you feel. This is the key that differentiates those who align themselves with the movement and those who remain stuck in repetitions that no longer deliver any learning. Therefore, listening to these signals is not an exercise in guesswork. It is a gesture of responsibility towards the process itself. When you recognize the symbols that are emerging, you begin to dialogue with the energy that is being offered. And in this silent dialogue, what many call alignment begins to happen. It's not something magical, nor automatic. It's gradual, and depends on how much you're willing to observe, feel, interpret, without rushing to understand everything, but with a willingness to stay present. Scorpio in this cycle will not receive ready-made maps. You will receive clues, fragments, mirrors, moments when everything seems to say something, but the meaning only reveals itself when you patiently put the pieces together. The sensitivity you carry is a tool, and now it needs to be used more subtly, because the signs won't scream, they will whisper. And if you're too busy trying to prove something, you might not be able to listen. But if you choose to stop for a few moments, close your eyes, breathe, and just listen to what is echoing inside you, you may realize that these signs are nothing new. They were already there, waiting for you to open up and see them for who they are. And when that happens, the path begins to reveal itself, not as something you need to look for outside, but as something that is already underway, and that just needs to be recognized. If this content has accompanied you here and awakened some memory, perception, or sensation that you had not yet put into words, I invite you to share in the comments what is happening inside. Write truthfully, even if it is not yet clear. Sometimes a heartfelt account becomes language for another person who is going through something similar. By now, it has become clear that the movements of time are not interested in masks. And for those born under the sign of Scorpio, this 2026 cycle brings a precise but silent requirement, leaving behind the armor that served for many years, but which now no longer supports the truth of its frequency. False emotional protection is the biggest point of tension for Scorpios in this cycle. It's not a matter of conscious choice nor of error. It's a process that happens because at some point in the past, hiding what you felt seemed to be the only possible way to preserve your own strength. But now, this mechanism no longer fulfills its protective function. He became an obstacle. Keeping secrets is nothing new. For Scorpio, this energy has always known how to navigate between deep layers where not everyone can see. But there is a difference between preserving one's intimacy with wisdom and hiding one's pain out of fear. When silence is strategic, it organizes. When silence is defensive, it weighs. And what the sky is saying now is that this weight is beginning to take its toll. From this point on in the cycle, saying everything is fine when the internal world is collapsing is no longer sustainable. As an answer, because the vibration of the environment begins to reveal what the words have not yet said. Pluto, as ruler of Scorpio, does not operate on the edges. He works in the centers. It transforms what is structural. And as he travels through Aquarius, he does so by demanding coherence with the collective, with exchanges, with the truth of the impact that each Scorpio has on the connections they build. Resisting what is new just because it challenges already known internal structures is what can interrupt valuable processes. And it's not about rushing. It's about the willingness to make space for what has not yet manifested itself, but which is already pulsating in the field as a possibility. There is a new field asking for passage, and this field does not accept the old disguised as adaptation. The defenses that have been created in the name of emotional survival need to be recognized with respect, but also with clarity. Yes, they existed. They were necessary at specific times. Avoiding exposure, maintaining control, silencing pain, hiding vulnerabilities, all of this had its reason. But now, what was once protection has become a wall, and this wall prevents the transformation that you have already intuited from materializing into visible actions. This does not happen suddenly, nor with blatant ruptures. Change arrives with subtle signs. A conversation that bothers you more than it should, an invitation that challenges you for no apparent reason, a feeling that the place you are no longer resonates with your presence. The new one doesn't scream, he whispers. He invites with small gestures, with almost imperceptible movements, with meetings that seem casual, but that carry codes of change. And for Scorpio, who has the ability to perceive what is hidden behind what is said, this call does not go unnoticed. What makes this travesty more intense is the fact that, to respond to the new, it will be necessary to let go of what was previously your way of navigating the world. And this includes old narratives about yourself, about others, about how relationships work, about what you believe you need to control in order not to lose yourself. But it is precisely when trying to control what is already being transformed that you disconnect from the truth itself, because controlling, at this moment, is resisting, and resisting, at this point in the journey, doesn't save you. It only prolongs a state that has already expired. Pluto does not drag for revenge. It repositions for consistency. And if something inside you is still insisting on using the same language to express a consciousness that has already changed, that something will become noise, a type of energetic interference that makes it difficult to even access clarity. And Scorpio without clarity begins to doubt their intuition. And this is the real point of weakness. The movement that presents itself now is not about renouncing who you are. It's about letting go of who you needed to be to protect yourself. There is a difference between essence and armor. And when time asks you to move, it is not asking you to forget your roots, but to allow the roots to breathe another air. You are no longer that version that needed to defend yourself from everything, and you may not yet know exactly who you are becoming. But this gap is the fertile space where the new consciousness will settle. None of this needs to be done in public. It's not about exposure. It is about presence with what is real. This means, for example, allowing yourself to speak the truth when people ask how you are, not with drama, but with authenticity. It means choosing to let someone get close, even though you know it could mess with internal structures that took you years to build. It means accepting that certain relationships, places, and habits are no longer part of what you are accessing now. This is rebirth, not because you want to start something new, but because what was no longer finds a place in who you are becoming. And most importantly, this process is not a test in the common sense of the word. He wasn't put in your path to prove anything to you. It is there because it is the natural continuation of what you have already awakened. You already know. You already noticed. What is missing now is no longer understanding. It's positioning. And this positioning begins in the invisible, in the way you allow yourself to abandon what was previously indispensable. Only then does it manifest itself in the visible, in the choices, in the words, in the relationships you sustain or end. Arriving at this point in the journey, it is impossible not to realize that something deeper is moving behind each seemingly simple experience. Everything that has been felt, silenced, reorganized, and observed so far has prepared the ground for what few can clearly identify, the opening of a specific field of activation. And when we talk about the field, we are referring to an energetic structure that is not on the visible plane, but that becomes accessible when certain internal keys are turned. For Scorpio, this opening does not happen by chance, and much less by repeating formulas. It requires full awareness and real surrender to what is being requested by something greater than personal desire. January 2026 doesn't just mark the beginning of a new calendar. For Scorpio, this period represents the activation of a portal, a vibrational space that only reveals itself when certain internal alignments are respected. And here's the tipping point that many avoid. That portal doesn't open with effort. He does not respond to the attempt to control what will be revealed. On the contrary, it presents itself at the exact moment you decide to abandon the need to control the process itself. And for a sign ruled by Pluto, whose nature is to investigate, protect, transform, and silence, this represents a type of renunciation that goes far beyond behavior. It is a vibrational renunciation. This field only becomes accessible when Scorpio does something that, until then, seemed impossible, admitting, honestly, something that had never been confessed, not even to themselves. And this is not a public confession, nor emotional exposure without criteria. We are talking about what has been pushed into the deepest corner of consciousness, kept under control for years, and which now begins to press inside like a truth that demands a voice. When this recognition happens, something moves on the energetic plane. It's as if the key that was always hidden finally found the right lock. There is no spectacle. There is no advertisement. just a feeling that something was unlocked on the field. The second key that activates this portal involves a specific emotional attitude. And here perhaps is the most delicate point of this process. To access this new field, Scorpio needs to act without using the emotional shielding that protected him so much in the past. This does not mean launching yourself without criteria, nor failing to have discernment. It does mean stopping acting as if you were always in a state of defense. The attitude needs to come from the center, from that place where you are not trying to predict the outcome, but just being consistent with how you feel. When this action arises from the core rather than the surface, the field aligns. But there is a third requirement, and perhaps this is the most complex. The portal is only established when Scorpio accepts losing, and this loss is not related to failure, defeat, or abandonment. It refers to the conscious release of something that no longer belongs to your energetic structure, even if it is still present in form. It could be a bond that was maintained out of habit, a narrative that no longer reflects its current state, a role you played for so long that you became confused with identity. This surrender does not happen with pain. It only happens when there is understanding. When you recognize that holding on to what is no longer real only delays what is to come. And it is at this point that the transformation happens. Because when these three actions, speaking an unspoken truth, acting emotionally without armor, and releasing what has expired, meet, Scorpio stops walking within a repetitive cycle of pain and starts accessing another vibration, the vibration of the mission. Not that heavy mission, as if it were a burden, but mission as code, a sequence of experiences that begin to make sense when you stop resisting what is and start cooperating with what is already being organized for you. This code does not arrive in the form of a ready response. It reveals itself little by little, like fragments of memory that are accessed as you maintain this new positioning. Suddenly, situations that previously seemed unfair start to make sense. Encounters that you could not understand gain meaning. Cycles that seemed to have no end finally end. Not because something external changed, but because you stopped feeding them with the old frequency. And this is the real reset for Scorpio. Not reinventing yourself to please the world, but repositioning yourself because your internal structure no longer resonates with the old language. The portal is not a magic door. It is an access field. And to access it, Scorpio needs to position themselves differently in the face of their own pain. Stop using it as a reference for all decisions and start looking at it as a process that shaped you, but that no longer needs to define you. When this change happens, everything around responds, because the vibration of the new is not silent. It creates resonance. It attracts other presences, other voices, other encounters, not because you sought it, but because you aligned yourself. This is the silent call of January, and it will not be understood by everyone because it is not obvious, but Scorpio feels it. And this feeling, when truly listened to, transforms any structure, even those who seemed unshakable, even those that were created to last a lifetime. If you've stayed with me this far, it's because something inside you is being touched by more than words. When we talk about spiritual astrology, we are referring to movements that go beyond what can be seen. And in the case of Scorpio, this experience is never light or superficial. The process you are going through at the beginning of 2026 is a call to align what you feel with what you hold, what you understand with what you manifest. It's not about changing who you are, but about recognizing the strength contained in the parts you silenced, in the emotions you kept, in the choices you avoided because you didn't want to expose yourself. But now, time doesn't demand exposure. It invites you to authenticity. This path that we are drawing together here, layer by layer, is not a motivational roadmap. It is a symbolic reading of a cycle that calls for alignment, precision, conscious surrender, and you know it. Scorpio doesn't need to be explained how they feel. Scorpio realizes before he knows, intuit before confirming. And if you recognize something along this journey, it is because this content came to you as a reflection of what was already maturing within you. No true transformation starts outside. Every significant turning point begins at the exact point where something becomes unsustainable from within. And perhaps, without realizing it, you are already at that point. Recognition of this stage does not need to come with fuss. It can manifest itself in a simple gesture of tiredness with what no longer vibrates. in a silent refusal to keep repeating yourself, in a decision made from a sudden perception, not rational, but undeniable. Scorpio does not advance by logic, move forward when something becomes impossible to ignore. And when that happens, everything starts to reorganize. The world responds to the vibration you update within yourself, and it doesn't matter if others understand. Does it matter? May you remain faithful to what you recognize as true. The changes that this cycle is bringing do not require haste. They ask for presence. And the Scorpio presence, when it is whole, is magnetic, transformative, inviolable. There is no distraction that can neutralize the intensity of someone who is aware of their own structure. And that is exactly what is being asked now, that you sustain what you feel with the firmness of someone who knows that they are not lost, but going through a code that has not yet been fully deciphered. This crossing, in fact, does not need to be done out loud. It can be silent, ritualistic, almost invisible to the common eye. But Scorpio never did anything for the common eye. He has always lived in depths that few understand, and now he is being called to use that depth as a language of transformation, not only for himself, but for those who come into his presence. Your energy influences more than you realize, and the more aware you are of this, the more you will know where to put your strength, where to direct your focus, where to silence, where to remain. We are talking about an energy that does not need a spotlight, but that transforms any space it passes through. And that starts within. It starts with the way you listen to yourself. It starts with the honesty with which you face impulses that arise without apparent explanation. It starts with the willingness to act, even without a guarantee of results. Because conscious action, at this stage, does not seek certainty. Look for coherence, and this coherence is what activates the energy of the cycle. When you sustain it, what needs to come, comes. What needs to leave, moves away. What needs to flourish finds space. And if at this point in the journey you felt that something moved, even if discreetly, it is because this field has already begun to align with your presence. The words that were spoken here are not just sentences organized with intention. These are frequency-charged sequences, built to touch the exact point where your consciousness was ready to be expanded. And so, if at any point throughout this content you felt something difficult to name, a lump in your throat, a desire to breathe deeper, a memory that came for no reason, know that this is an answer. There is no such thing as neutral content when it is received with attention. You have already started the movement. If it made sense, if it touched, if it translated something that you had already been feeling and didn't know how to explain, then share that moment. Leave your stamp here in the comments with one of the phrases that now carries another weight, because it is not just an answer, it is a milestone within your own process. Write, "I carry this seal," if you understand that you are going through a cycle that positions you with another vibration. Or, write, "I can't resist what came to transform me," if you are already aware that you can no longer sustain what doesn't. Vibrate at the same frequency as your present. These phrases are not for the algorithm. They are for you, to establish what is already happening, to energetically seal what you have already accessed. And if you know someone who is also going through a silent moment but full of internal reorganizations, share this video. Because sometimes, a message arrives not to bring news but to confirm what is already underway. And confirmation is often all someone needs to follow. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you recognized the importance of this message. So take advantage of this moment and subscribe to the channel now. This way, you can continue to follow the next movements that are yet to come without missing any updates. Leave a like if this content made sense to you, because this helps to deliver this video to other people who are also going through similar transformations. And if you want to continue on this journey of spiritual self-knowledge, click now on the next video that appears here on the left side of your screen. It is the natural continuation of what you just experienced, and it can reveal even more to you about what is moving within your sign right now. I'll meet you there.